世尊. At the sight of Shang Qinghua, Luo Binghe was far happier than shocked. After all, since the mayhem began, he anticipated that Shang Qinghua would absolutely be so worried that he would personally enter the gorge to rescue them. Shang Qinghua swiftly righted himself. He swept his gaze over the many disciples coming to surround him and ask, "Is anyone injured?" "Other than those martial sisters at the riverside, and the martial brother who died just now, we've suffered no other casualties," said Luo Binghe. "You've been through a lot," said Shang Qinghua. Luo Binghe smiled, his eyes shining brightly. This disciple was only doing his duty. Shang Qinghua glanced at Qin Wanyue, whose eyes were still red. "Binghe, you can still smile? Don't you know that one of your wives is dead?" Now that a powerful senior had appeared to rescue them, every one of the disciples acted like they'd seen their mother, stopping just short of clinging to Shang Qinghua's thighs and wailing. "There's no need to panic, nor reason to fear," said Shang Qinghua. "The sect leaders know the situation within the barrier, and a large number of the seniors have already entered the gorge to help. Protect yourselves well. We'll be able to break out soon." His words were like a narcotic. The youths who'd been frightened out of their wits absorbed them and became at ease. "Shizun, what exactly was that thing?" asked Luo Binghe. When it came to the proud immortal demon Wei's demonic beasts, he'd really asked the right person. Shang Qinghua spoke with great familiarity, like he was listing his family treasures. "It's no surprise you've never seen one. That was a ghost head spider. Mean-tempered and terrifying to behold, it can mimic the sound of crying infants and use that to lure prey. Once the prey approaches, it uses the suction pads below its head to firmly grip the top of its prey's skull. Its 8 legs are incredibly sharp and can pierce right through the bone, allowing it to drain the brains of living creatures." As Luo Binghe listened to this excruciatingly detailed explanation, he was filled with both admiration and awe. "To think such an evil creature exists in this world, this disciple is truly too ignorant," he said. Ever since Luo Binghe apprenticed under Menmo, Shang Qinghua had been able to provide him with less and less guidance on martial and sword techniques. This rare chance to show off as a master before his disciple secretly left Shang Qinghua feeling an immense sense of satisfaction. It was like he'd finally found his long-lost teacher's halo. "Ghost head spiders are a demonic rarity," he went on. "Being unsuited to the human realm's environment, it had been many years since any sightings of them, so naturally they don't appear in most reference guides. Next time you see one, remember to directly strike its temples. The one we just saw was a male, and that's fortunate. The females are even more terrifying." They hadn't yet said much to each other when more rustling came from the leaves overhead. One by one, heads suspended upside down from threads of white silk descended from the trees. Shang Qinghua's expression completely changed. Ghost head spider cries attracted large numbers of them to encircle and attack their prey. He swept his fan, releasing a powerful gust of wind and snapping dozens of silk threads. The ghost spiders smashed into the ground and thudded like overripe fruit. "Go!" yelled Shang Qinghua. Luo Binghe sprang into action. While the ghost head spiders were dazed and reeling, the entire group broke out into a run. Master and disciple, one in the lead carving a path, the other bringing up the rear, together sandwiched the bloated procession. The two ends slaughtered foes until it rained blood, the air thick with the stench of carnage. Ghost head spiders were agile and possessed incredible jumping ability, but as they flew and leapt through the air, the barrage of spiritual blast fired by master and disciple punctured them like sieves. Once Luo Binghe knew how to deal with these beasts, it was like he had been blessed with divinity. He could practically pierce one or two with a single blow with his eyes closed. The scene overhead was a mess of blood and gore, anguished wails and monstrous howls. Even though, with all they accomplished, in the end, There were still too many, and they proved impossible to defend against. Just as Shang Qinghua started to worry about when that goddamn hack of a poison would act up, he felt his spiritual power stagnate, and his next strike came out empty. Truly speak of the devil! Shang Qinghua swiftly redirected the flow of his energy into a physical attack. With a flip of his hand, his fan sliced the ghost head spider lunging towards him horizontally in two. Luo Binghe had been paying keen attention to Shang Qinghua's condition. He noticed something was off and asked, "Shizun?" "It's nothing," Shang Qinghua rushed to say. "Focus on yourself." Fortunately, under Shang Qinghua's leadership, they'd already reached a particular area. As if the ghost head spiders had encountered an invisible barrier, they didn't dare advance and instead wailed and howled while falling back, until at last they withdrew into the shrubbery and trees and vanished. Shang Qinghua let out a sigh of relief. Delicately panting, her expression uncertain, Qin Wanyu asked, "Senior Shen, why were those demonic beasts unwilling to approach this place?" "Have you forgotten what kind of mystical flower grows in Juedi Gorge?" asked Shang Qinghua. In truth, the one who'd forgotten was him. "Forgive me for not remembering the flower's name." Luo Binghe very considerably remembered it for him, speaking the name right away. "Oh, the 1,000 Leaves Fresh Snow Lotus." Shang Qinghua finally realized why he had been unable to remember the name. The number of mystical flowers named something snow whatever, or this and that lotus, was such that they were more numerous than old memes. There was no way in hell that anyone could remember. "Correct," said Shang Qinghua. "This is indeed the 1,000 Leaves Fresh Snow Lotus. This flower has grown within the depths of Juedi Gorge for thousands of years. Its spiritual qi is extraordinary, and furthermore, it is the natural bane of creatures from the demon realm. It emits an innate barrier that repels demonic beasts. Therefore, as long as we're within the protected zone, we won't suffer too many attacks." "The natural bane of demonic creatures?" Luo Binghe suddenly asked. He'd been listening with rapt attention the entire time. Now, intense sparks seemed to ignite within his gaze, which flickered faintly with a peculiar quality. Shang Qinghua thought it strange. "Yes?" "Then, Shizun, could this spray of 1,000 Leaves Fresh Snow Lotus cure demonic poison?" Luo Binghe asked. Shang Qinghua was horrified. Look, Luo Binghe couldn't be hoping to pick the mystical flower and cure him, right?" "Wait! Stop it! The girl you're supposed to pick the flower for, Qin Wanyu, is right next to us watching, and you want to deflower it in her presence for a big strong man to boot? Leave your wife some dignity, all right?" "We should handle the crisis before us first," Shang Qinghua said quickly. But Luo Binghe wouldn't let go. "This disciple asks for Shizun's instruction." "It cannot do what you imply," said Shang Qinghua. "Has Shizun tried before?" Luo Binghe pushed. "If we don't try, how can we know? This disciple knows that Shizun doesn't want him to take chances, but if we don't take this one, this disciple will never be at peace." "This really isn't the time. Why must you be so filial at this critical juncture? I can't tell you that the only way to completely cure this poison is to take a trip to Pound Town with you, okay?" Shang Qinghua couldn't say any of this in such terms. His expression became cold. "Has this master indulged you such that you think you can willfully fool around at a time like this?" he said sternly. To tell the truth, over these past few years, due to Shang Qinghua's strange desire to preemptively atone, along with certain other sentiments, he'd never spoken to his disciple with even the slightest bit of harshness. So once he did, Luo Binghe first startled. Then, as expected, he obediently shut his mouth. But his gaze remained obstinate, and he refused to sheath Zhen Yang's sword, obviously unwilling to back down. Just as the two reached a deadlock, the dense overgrowth of grass and the leaves rustled, and a person stepped out. Behind him came a group of battered and exhausted disciples who had no doubt endured a bloody struggle. On guard, Shang Qinghua looked his way. As soon as he came face to face with the newcomer, he felt like a giant hammer from the sky had smashed into his temples. In truth, this person's appearance could have been considered proper and handsome. It was just that, in his every word and action, there was an inescapable air of sleaziness. At the sight of Shang Qinghua, he smiled and returned his sword, flowing with light, back to its sheath. "Ah, so it's Shen Marshal, brother," he said. Meeting up with you guys puts my heart at ease." At ease, my ass. With you here, I can't be at ease, okay? The person in front of him was a main culprit behind this catastrophe. Shang Qinghua, a character that Shen Qinghua had mentally roasted before with "he goes to Tsinghua University, well, I even took Beijing University's exam," was a peak lord of Anding Peak. At the same time, he had another important identity. He was a spy, a pawn planted many years ago by the demons, and he had orchestrated the disaster at Immortal Alliance Conference. Long ago, Shang Qinghua had been only one of Anding Peak's many insignificant and nameless disciples. Then he'd been captured by the demons, who had forced him to become a mole. No, he hadn't really been forced. He happily took on the important task of being a mole without even a hint of discomfort. Secretly backed by the demons, Shang Qinghua's road became smooth and sailing. He swiftly rose through the ranks until he actually attained the position of Peak Lord of Anding Peak. However, he still wasn't satisfied. And why not? Because it was Anding Peak. As soon as you heard the name Anding, stable and settled, you knew it wasn't a place for the ambitious. This peak's tradition and specialty was completely in line with its name: logistics. So, of course, the entire peak, from top to bottom, including the peak lord, were like bricks, to be moved wherever they were needed. Send some cheap laborers here today, assist with supplies there tomorrow. Mountain gates broken? Get Anding Peak to fix it. Missing a carriage driver? Get Anding Peak to send someone. This month's expenses over budget and you need money? Get Anding Peak to file a report. They really couldn't be called impressive, or imposing, or cool, awesome, insane, badass, or hyped. Did they even have the dignity of a peak lord? Even a talented, low-level disciple from another peak would have more to brag about. So, Shang Qinghua became a demon flunky without hesitation. He took it upon himself to help the demons conquer the human realm and committed all kinds of evil. Shen Qingqiu's stomach hurt as soon as he saw the guy. "Shang, Marshal brother," he said. "As you approached, did you see a large demonic beast nearby?" Shang Qinghua froze. "A large demonic beast? There wasn't one." Shen Qingqiu's heart thumped. There wasn't? The large demonic beast in question was one of the plotline's key devices. In the original work, Luo Binghe's demonic heritage was exposed because someone released a black moon rhinoceros python at the Immortal Alliance Conference. To protect the innocent, Luo Binghe engaged it in a life-or-death struggle. The black moon rhinoceros python's destructive power and body were both enormous. Of course, he couldn't defeat it. So, what was there to do if he couldn't win? Activate seed mode. In doing so, Luo Binghe exposed himself to Shen Qinqiu. Only then did Shen Qinqiu have the excuse to strike him down, eliminating one's companion for the sake of justice. And when he struck his student down, he enabled Luo Binghe to level up. Thus far, Shen Qinqiu hadn't sensed the demonic chi of the black moon rhinoceros python, much less heard its signature moonward howl, described in enigmatic fashion as like that of both a python and a rhinoceros. Now, Shang Qinghua said he hadn't even seen it. Shen Qinqiu couldn't help being on his guard. Without this key plot device, surely the system couldn't ask him to suddenly strike Luo Binghe without any justification? He couldn't help but glance at the silent and speaking Luo Binghe. The child was still struggling with the matter of whether he should pick the flower to cure his master's poison. There was a stubborn glint in his eyes, as if he still felt a little discontent. Discontent my ass! Come on, I'm doing this for your own good. If you're going to pick flowers, don't give them to the wrong person, thank you. Oh yeah, on my way here we lost quite a few disciples from various sects, said Shang Qinghua, tone full of grief and lamentation. They were all the future pillars of the cultivation world. The person who released these demonic creatures is truly poisonous and shameless, underhanded and vulgar, cruel to the point of insanity. Shen Qingqiu was speechless. Oh my god! Weren't you the one who released those creatures? Are you really okay with using these lines to attack yourself? Although, if you don't mind, I guess that's fine. He hadn't finished his mental roast when, without warning, the earth began to shake. People staggered and fell all over the place, terrified and confused, their questioning voices merging into one. Shen Qingqiu's pupils contracted. There was no mistaking the sensation of a magnitude 7.5 earthquake. The endless abyss had finally been opened.